Have you ever felt the weight of a gaze from an empty forest, a palpable scrutiny from the ancient dark between the trees? Have you ever heard a whisper carried on a winter wind that sounded too much like a name, too much like a warning? In the mist-shrouded mountains and lantern-lit villages of a land we now call Japan, such feelings are not dismissed as fantasy. They are acknowledgments of a world that runs parallel to our own, a realm whose borders are as thin and permeable as shoji paper, and just as easily torn. Here, the boundary between the living and the unseen has always been perilously thin. This is the world of the yokai, the spirits, specters, shapeshifters, and demons that were the hidden faces of human fear and desire. They are the echoes of forgotten emotions, the personifications of nature's untamable power, and the guardians of cosmic justice. I am your guide through these shadow-shrouded realms, and I welcome you to this exploration of the night's most profound truths. The thesis that we shall explore together is that these legends are far more than simple stories. They're a form of ancestral memory, a library of existential warnings etched not in ink, but into the very soil, the flowing water, and the sighing wind. They're the collective nightmares of a people, and within those nightmares, they reveal truths we have long since tried to forget. If you, like me, feel an inexorable pull toward the darkness, not for the terror it promises, but for the wisdom it conceals, then you have found a sanctuary here. I invite you to join our community of scholars and seekers. Subscribe to our channel, and be certain to activate the notifications so that you're alerted whenever a new expedition into the Twilight Territories is set to commence. As we proceed, I ask you to consider which of these ancient entities resonates most deeply with your own modern fears. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, for the exchange of such knowledge is how we keep these vital stories breathing. And now, with the formalities observed, let our journey into the heart of the yokai mythos begin. We shall venture into the lore of 5 distinct and formidable entities, each a vessel of a unique and chilling truth. These are not tales spun for children's entertainment, nor are they the sanitized monsters of popular media. They are primal forces, born from the deepest anxieties of the human condition, from the terror of starvation and the fury of the storm, from the poison of jealousy and the crushing weight of history. We will confront the colossal hunger of the Gashadakuro, feel the lethal chill of the Yukiana, untangle the silken deceptions of the Jorgomo, plumb the abyssal grief of the Nirana, and finally, unearth the ancient resentment of the Tsuchigomo. Prepare yourselves. The path ahead is dark, and the air grows cold. First, we turn our gaze toward the skeletal horror known as the Gashadakuro, whose name translates to starving skeleton. This is not the clattering specter of a single individual, a ghost rattling its own bones in a lonely grave. The Gashadakuro is a monument to mass death, an amalgamation of collective agony. It is said to be formed from the bones of hundreds, even thousands, of people who have died from starvation or in the unreported carnage of a battlefield, their bodies left unburied and their funerary rites unobserved. Their individual grievances, their pain and anger, coalesce like a storm front, knitting together into a single, titanic entity of pure, indiscriminate rage. It is a walking testament to the fact that the dead, when forgotten, do not simply fade away. They accumulate. Towering over the tallest trees, estimated to be 15 times the height of an average man, the Gashadakuro is a moving cathedral of bone. Its form is imperfect. A chaotic jumble of skeletal remains fused into a vaguely humanoid shape. Rib cages form its massive torso. Femurs and tibias bind into colossal limbs, and its skull is a composite of countless others, its empty sockets glowing with an eerie, internal fire of malevolent phosphorescence. Its only sound is a deafening, percussive rattling, gachi-gachi, as its monumental frame moves through the landscape. This sound is often the only warning given, a sound like 1,000 skeletal hands clapping in unison, a death rattle amplified to the volume of an earthquake. Its powers are born of brute force and supernatural terror. It is said to be indestructible and invisible until it is almost upon its victim. Its sole motivation is a gnawing, insatiable hunger, not for food, but for vengeance against the living, who continue to draw breath while its constituent souls were denied their peace. It seizes its victims, crushes them in its bony fist, and bites off their heads, drinking the spraying blood to momentarily quench the infernal fire of its rage. The origin of such a creature is rooted in the fundamental human need for remembrance and respect for the dead. In Shinto and Buddhist traditions, the proper funerary rites are not merely a social custom. They're a crucial step in guiding the soul of the deceased on its journey to the afterlife. A body left to rot in a field, unmourned and unpurified, becomes a source of spiritual pollution. The soul, tethered to its decaying vessel, becomes a magnet for negative energy, its grief festering into wrath. When this happens on a mass scale, during a devastating famine, a brutal war, or a sweeping plague, the sheer volume of spiritual distress creates a vortex. The Gashadakuro is the physical manifestation of that vortex, a monster born from the societal sin of neglect. It is the ultimate consequence of turning away from mass suffering. Consider the grim reality of the Tenmei era during the late 18th century. A series of volcanic eruptions, including the catastrophic explosion of Mount Asama, plunged Japan into a period of darkness and cold, leading to widespread crop failures and one of the most devastating famines in its history. Records from the time speak of entire villages vanishing, their populaces succumbing to starvation or driven to madness and cannibalism. It was in the shadow of such events that the legend of the Gashadakuro gained its most potent traction. One particular account, from a traveling monk whose name is lost to history, described a journey through the blighted countryside of the Tohoku region. He wrote of a silence that was heavier than any sound, a landscape picked clean by desperation. One night, as he sought shelter in a ruined and abandoned temple, he heard it, the distant, rhythmic clatter. At first, he mistook it for a landslide, but the sound was too orderly, too deliberate. Peering through a crack in the temple wall, he saw it against the sickly light of a low-hanging moon. A giant of bone, striding across the rice paddies that had long ago turned to dust. It moved with a terrifying purpose, its skeletal head swiveling, its glowing eyes scanning the darkness. The monk held his breath, praying to every god he knew, as the colossal figure passed by, its rattling passage shaking the very foundations of the temple. The next morning, he found the tracks, immense, vaguely human footprints pressed deep into the earth, littered with tiny fragments of yellowed bone. The Gashadakuro is a powerful sociological metaphor. It represents the bill that always comes due for collective indifference. A society that allows its people to starve, that fails to honor its war dead, that builds its prosperity upon forgotten atrocities, is a society that is actively creating its own monsters. The Gashadakuro is the physical embodiment of a national conscience haunted by its own failures. It is the rage of the disenfranchised, the forgotten, and the unmourned, returning from the grave not as individual ghosts seeking personal justice, but as a single, unified force of destruction demanding to be seen. Its hunger is the hunger of those who were denied their share. Its size is the scale of the tragedy that created it. It teaches a chilling lesson. That which we bury without ceremony does not stay buried. It grows. In our modern age of 24-hour news cycles, we are constantly bombarded with images of mass suffering in distant lands. Famines, wars, genocides. These tragedies flicker across our screens and are quickly replaced by the next headline. We grow numb, desensitized. The Gashadakuro serves as a terrifying, archaic reminder of the spiritual danger of this apathy. It suggests that the accumulated pain of the world does not simply dissipate. It concentrates. In a world increasingly defined by inequality and the specter of mass casualty events, the Gashadakuro is not a relic of a superstitious past. It is a forecast. It is the fear that one day, the sum total of all the suffering we have chosen to ignore will rise up, take a physical form, and come rattling for us all. And its only warning will be the sound of grinding, unforgiving bone. From the collective agony of the fields, we now ascend to the pristine, silent peaks of the mountains in winter, the domain of our second entity, the Yukiana, the Snow Woman. She is a figure of breathtaking duality, an embodiment of the lethal beauty of winter itself. To behold her is to see the sublime and terrifying soul of a blizzard given human form. She is not a creature of brute force like the Gashitakuro, but of insidious, creeping cold and fatal enchantment. She is the whisper of the wind that leads a traveler astray, the perfect whiteout that erases the path, the sudden, soul-stealing drop in temperature that freezes the very breath in one's lungs. Her appearance is as captivating as it is terrifying. The Yukiana is universally described as a woman of impossible beauty, with long, raven-black hair that contrasts starkly against skin the color of fresh, untouched snow. Her eyes are said to hold the cold, dark depths of a frozen lake, and her lips are the pale blue of a person in the final stages of hypothermia. She glides over the snow without leaving footprints, a seamless part of the winter landscape, often appearing as a translucent, spectral figure in a blowing drift. Her very presence radiates an unnatural cold, and her primary power is the manipulation of winter itself. She can summon blizzards with a gesture, and her breath is a visible cloud of freezing mist that can stop a person's heart in an instant. Those who encounter her are often lulled into a state of mesmerized calm, the fatal lethargy of extreme cold, and they willingly lie down in the snow to die, her beautiful, cold face the last thing they ever see. The origins of the Yukiana are varied, often tied to stories of women who perished in snowstorms, their spirits becoming one with the element that claimed them. Some tales depict her as the ghost of a mother who died with her child in the snow, forever seeking to steal the warmth of living children. In other versions, she is a more elemental being, a winter goddess or nature spirit, neither human nor ghost, but simply the personification of the mountain's cold in different power. This duality is key to her nature. Is she a vengeful spirit seeking retribution, or a natural force operating without malice, as impersonal and deadly as an avalanche? The answer, it seems, changes with the telling, reflecting humanity's own conflicted relationship with the natural world, a source of both profound beauty and utter terror. One of the most famous tales concerning the Yukiana, recorded by Lafcadio Hearn, illustrates her capricious and dangerous nature. It speaks of two woodcutters, one old and one young, named Mosaku and Minakichi. One evening, they were caught in a terrible blizzard and forced to take shelter in a ferryman's hut on the mountainside. During the night, as the storm howled, Minakichi awoke to find a beautiful woman in white leaning over his companion. She breathed her frosty breath upon the old man, and he died instantly, his body covered in a fine layer of hoarfrost. The Yukiana then turned to the terrified Minakichi. She looked at him for a long moment and said, "I intended to do the same to you, but I cannot help but pity you. You are so young. You may go, but if you ever tell anyone, even your own mother, of what you have seen tonight, I will know, and I will kill you." Minakichi swore he would never speak of it, and the Snow Woman vanished into the storm. Years passed. Minakichi recovered and eventually met a beautiful young woman named Yuki. They fell in love, married, and had many children, living a happy life. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Minakichi looked at his wife's face, illuminated by the warm light, and was struck by how much she resembled the terrifying woman from the hut so many years ago. In a moment of foolish comfort, he broke his vow. He told her the story of that fateful night. As he finished, his wife's face transformed. Her beauty became cold and terrible, her skin turning the color of snow. She rose to her feet, her voice a chilling whisper of the wind. "It was I," she hissed. "I told you I would kill you if you ever spoke of it. But for the sake of our children, I will spare you." Care for them well, for if they have any reason to complain, I will return for you." With that, she melted into a fine white mist and was swept out of the house into the night, leaving Minakichi alone with his children and his terror. The Yukiana is a potent symbol of nature's deceptive allure and the peril of broken promises. She represents a contract between humanity and the wild. You may admire my beauty, you may even briefly enjoy my favor, but you must never forget my power or betray my trust. The story of Minakichi is a psychological drama about the impossibility of truly taming the wild, whether it is the wilderness of a mountain or the wilderness within a human heart. He brings the Yukiana into his home, gives her a human name, and believes he has domesticated her. But her true nature is only dormant, not erased. His transgression is not just speaking of the event, but the hubris of believing he could possess and control something so fundamentally untamable. The legend serves as a powerful environmental metaphor, a caution against humanity's tendency to view nature as a resource to be exploited or a beauty to be possessed. The Yukiana reminds us that nature has its own laws, its own secrets, and its own capacity for terrible retribution when those laws are violated. In a modern context, as we face the catastrophic consequences of climate change, the Yukiana's legend takes on a new and terrifying relevance. We have, as a species, broken our promise to the natural world. We have exploited its resources, ignored its warnings, and presumed we could control its power. The blizzards we now face are rising sea levels, superstorms, and raging wildfires. The Yukiana is no longer just a specter on a lonely mountain pass. She is a metaphor for the planet's entire climate system, a beautiful, complex, and life-giving force that we have provoked into a state of lethal fury. The legend warns that the beauty we once took for granted can and will turn against us, and that our comfortable, modern lives are as fragile as a woodcutter's hut in a gathering storm. Her final whisper is a question for us all. Having broken our vow, what chilling consequences will we now face? We descend now from the frozen peaks into the humid, shadowed valleys and the intricate, man-made darkness of ancient cities. Here, in the dim light of a paper lantern or the deceptive shimmer of a waterfall, we may encounter our third entity, the Jorigomo, or entangling bride. This yokai embodies the terror of predation hidden behind a mask of seduction, a creature that weaves together the primal fears of arachnids and the complex social anxieties surrounding female power and sexuality. The Jorigomo is a master of deception, a hunter who does not chase its prey, but draws it, mesmerized and willing, into its deadly embrace. The Jorigomo is a type of spider that, upon reaching 400 years of age, develops powerful magical abilities and a malevolent intelligence. Its true form is that of a monstrously large spider, often capable of breathing fire or spewing a potent, debilitating venom. However, its most terrifying ability is to shape-shift into the form of a stunningly beautiful woman. In this guise, she preys on unsuspecting men. Young samurai, wandering monks, and foolish merchants are her favored victims. She often makes her lair near a waterfall or in a secluded mountain cave, places of natural beauty that mask the charnel house within. She might be seen playing a biwa, a traditional Japanese lute, her enchanting music luring travelers from the main road. Once a victim is ensnared by her beauty and charm, she reveals her true nature, binding him in impossibly strong spider silk and saving him to be devoured later at her leisure. Her profile is a study in deadly artifice. As a woman, her beauty is flawless, almost unnaturally so. Her movements are graceful, her voice is melody, and her words are honeyed promises. But subtle clues betray her inhuman nature. A shadow she casts might have too many limbs. Her reflection in a pool of water might show a monstrous arachnid. Her home, while appearing elegant, will be strangely devoid of dust and swathed in an overabundance of silken tapestries and screens. Her supernatural abilities are centered on illusion and ensnarement. The silk she produces is not just strong. It is often imbued with magic, capable of draining the life force of those it touches. The music she plays is a form of hypnotic suggestion, dulling the senses and overriding the will of her prey. She is the ultimate femme fatale, her allure being her most effective weapon. The origin of the Jorogumo speaks to a deep-seated suspicion of powerful, independent women in a patriarchal society, conflating female sexuality with predatory danger. The spider, with its patient, deliberate method of trapping and consuming its prey, becomes a terrifying metaphor for a woman who operates outside the established social norms. She is not a wife or a mother in the traditional sense. She is a solitary predator who uses the very tools of feminine charm, beauty, grace, music, not for procreation or social harmony, but for her own survival and sustenance. The legend arises from a culture that often viewed female desire and agency as a destructive, chaotic force that needed to be contained. A chilling tale from the Edo period illustrates the Jorogumo's methods. A young, ambitious samurai named Fujiwara no Hidesato was traveling through the mountains of Aizu when he came upon a magnificent waterfall. There, sitting on a rock and playing a biwa, was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He was instantly captivated. She told him her name was Ayam, and that she was the lonely guardian of this place. Forgetting his journey and his duties, Hidesato stayed with her, spending days lost in her company. His retainers, waiting for him at a nearby inn, grew concerned. One of them, a wise old soldier, suspected supernatural foul play. He advised Hidesato to test the woman by presenting her with a sacred Buddhist text. That evening, Hidesato brought a small sutra scroll to Ayam's cave. Upon seeing it, her beautiful face contorted in rage and pain. Her disguise flickered, and for a moment, Hidesato saw her true form, a colossal, multi-eyed spider. He drew his sword, but he was too late. With a shriek, she spewed a thick web from her mouth, entangling him completely. His retainers, hearing his screams, rushed to the waterfall, but found only the samurai's sword and a single, discarded sandal lying beside a deep, dark cave, its entrance shrouded in thick, sticky webs that shimmered in the moonlight. Hidesato was never seen again. The analytical interpretation of the Jorogumo reveals her as a complex psychological and sociological symbol. Psychologically, she is the embodiment of the Freudian concept of the vagina dentata, the fear of female sexuality as a castrating, consuming force. She represents the terror of losing one's identity, autonomy, and very life to an overwhelming sensual attraction. Sociologically, she is a cautionary tale about the dangers of straying from the path, both literally and figuratively. Hidesato's downfall is his dereliction of duty in favor of personal pleasure. The Jorogumo punishes those who allow their desires to override their reason and their responsibilities. She is a guardian of the established order, a monster who preys on those who step outside its bounds. In the modern world, the Jorogumo's web has taken on new forms. She is no longer just a specter by a waterfall. She is the siren call of addiction, the deceptive allure of get-rich-quick schemes, the carefully constructed online persona that lures the unsuspecting into a trap. She is the beautiful lie that we desperately want to believe, the promise of easy pleasure that masks a terrible price. The legend of the Jorogumo teaches us to look beneath the beautiful surface, to question that which seems too good to be true, and to be wary of the silken threads of our own desires. She is a timeless reminder that the most dangerous traps are not the ones we are forced into, but the ones we walk into willingly, mesmerized by the beauty of our own predator. Her music still plays, not from a biwa, but from our screens, our advertisements, and our own unchecked ambitions, and the web is as sticky as it has ever been. Leaving the intricate traps of the land, we are now drawn to the water's edge, to the dark, churning coastlines and the deep, murky rivers where our fourth entity makes her home. Here we meet the Neurana, the wet woman. This creature is a more primal and reptilian horror than those we have previously discussed. She is not a metaphor for societal ills or psychological anxieties in the same complex way. Rather, she is an embodiment of raw, instinctual dread. The Neurana is the fear of the unknown depths, the terror of being dragged beneath the surface, and the horrifying perversion of maternal and feminine imagery into something monstrous and predatory. The Neurana possesses a truly grotesque and unsettling form, a nightmarish chimera of the human and the serpentine. She has the head and torso of a woman, often described as having long, beautiful, wet black hair that clings to her face and body. From the waist down, however, she is the massive, coiling body of a gigantic sea serpent, stretching for hundreds of feet. Her eyes are said to be small and snake-like. Her tongue is forked, and she possesses immense, crushing strength in her coils. She is a creature of the liminal spaces, haunting the transitional zones between land and sea, beaches, riverbanks, and rocky shores. She is often seen washing her long hair at the water's edge, a deceptively placid image that conceals her deadly nature. Her methods of hunting are a masterclass in psychological manipulation. In some legends, she appears to a lone traveler, cradling a bundle that resembles a swaddled infant. She pleads with the passerby to hold her child for just a moment while she rests. The victim, moved by pity or social obligation, agrees. As soon as they take the bundle, it becomes impossibly heavy, rooting them to the spot. The bundle itself is not a child, but a mass of enchanted rock and seaweed designed to trap her prey. Pinned by the immense weight, the victim can only watch in horror as the Neurana emerges from the water, her true, serpentine form revealed, to claim her meal, using her long, forked tongue to suck the blood and life force from her helpless victim. In other versions, she is more direct, simply using her overwhelming physical power to crush boats and drag sailors down to a watery grave. The origins of the Neurana are ancient, likely stemming from pre-modern Japan's deep and respectful fear of the ocean. For an island nation, the sea was both a source of life and a constant, unpredictable threat. The Neurana gives a face to this duality. The beautiful woman is the calm, inviting surface of the water, while the monstrous serpent beneath is the typhoon, the rogue wave, the unseen leviathan of the deep. Some folklorists also connect her to the myth of Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea, suggesting she may be one of his monstrous daughters or a servant, a guardian of the ocean's treasures who deals mercilessly with trespassers. Her child trick adds a layer of profound psychological horror, perverting the most fundamental symbol of innocence and helplessness into a deadly lure. There is a tale from the coast of Shirmaine Prefecture that speaks of a young fisherman named Jiro. He was known for his arrogance, boasting that he feared no storm and could read the moods of the sea better than any man alive. One evening, against the advice of the village elders, he set out to fish during a strange, unnaturally calm tide. As dusk settled, he saw a woman on a distant, rocky outcrop, seemingly in distress. Rowing closer, he saw her cradling a small bundle and weeping. It was the Neurana. She called out to him, begging him to hold her baby so she could find its father who had been swept away. Jiro, his arrogance blinding him to the danger, agreed, seeing a chance to play the hero. He took the bundle, and immediately his arms were weighed down as if he were holding a mountain. The boat groaned under the sudden weight. He looked at the bundle and saw not a baby's face, but a swirling mass of wet sand and kelp. From the water, the woman's weeping turned to a low hiss. Her beautiful face melted away to reveal the cold, reptilian features of the serpent. Her massive coils rose from the deep, encircling his small boat. Jiro's pride had led him into a trap from which there was no escape. The next day, the villagers found his boat, smashed to pieces, washed up on the shore. Of Jiro, there was no sign, save for a single strand of impossibly long, wet black hair tangled in the splintered wood. The Neurana serves as a powerful symbol of nature's deceptive traps. She is a lesson in humility, particularly for those who believe they can master the natural world. Jiro's flaw was his hubris, his belief that he understood and could control the ocean. The Neurana is the ocean's horrifying answer to that hubris. The perversion of the mother and child image is particularly chilling. It preys on the human instinct for compassion, turning our best nature against us. This makes the Neurana a metaphor for a specific kind of existential betrayal. The horror of discovering that something you thought was safe, pure, or worthy of pity is, in fact, a deadly trap. It is the fear that the universe itself is not just indifferent, but actively, malevolently deceptive. In our contemporary world, the Neurana's legend resonates with our anxieties about hidden dangers and things that are not what they seem. She is the friendly email that contains a virus, the charismatic leader with a hidden, monstrous agenda, the seemingly safe investment that is actually a financial black hole. She teaches a grim but necessary lesson. Trust your instincts. The elders who warned Jiro were not superstitious fools. They were experienced sailors who understood the ocean's subtle warnings. The Neurana is the ultimate consequence of ignoring those who have a deeper, more intuitive understanding of the world's dangers. She is the chilling whisper from the deep that reminds us that some things are best left undisturbed, and that not every cry for help is genuine. Sometimes compassion is just another name for bait. For our final journey, we move from the water and the mountains deep into the earth itself, and equally deep into the annals of history and political strife. We unearth the story of the Tsuchigumo, the earth spider or ground spider. Unlike the other yokai we have explored, the Tsuchigumo is not merely a creature of folklore, but a term steeped in historical conflict, a name used by conquerors to denigrate and dehumanize the conquered. The Tsuchigumo is a complex and fascinating figure, representing the resentment of the dispossessed, the memory of forgotten gods, and a monstrous form of a vanquished people's enduring hatred. The appearance of the Tsuchigumo varies in legend, but it is always chthonic and terrifying. In some tales, they're a race of cave-dwelling people with strange, spider-like features. In others, they are truly monstrous arachnids of gigantic size, with limbs like tree trunks and eyes that glow like embers in the dark. They are often depicted as living in vast, underground burrows and tunnel systems, particularly in the mountains of the Yamato region. Their abilities are often magical in nature, masters of illusion and shape-shifting, capable of casting webs that are not merely sticky, but filled with dark magic, and commanding legions of smaller, demonic spiders. Their motivations are not born of hunger or caprice, but of a deep, abiding resentment for the new rulers of the land who drove them to the margins and into the darkness. To understand the Tsuchigumo, one must understand a key moment in Japanese history, the consolidation of power by the Yamato clan, who would eventually establish the line of Japanese emperors. Before their dominance, Japan was a collection of disparate tribes and clans, each with their own chieftains, territories, and deities. The term Tsuchigumo was used in early historical chronicles like the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki as a pejorative term for these rival, unconquered clans who resisted Yamato rule. These peoples were often described as living in pit dwellings and were characterized as primitive, monstrous, and the official histories, written by the victors, transformed these human political opponents into literal monsters, giant earth spiders, to justify their conquest and extermination. The Tsuchigumo legend is, therefore, a form of historical propaganda, a demonization of an indigenous people. The most famous legend of the Tsuchigumo involves the heroic warrior Minamoto no Reiko. According to the epic tale, Reiko fell gravely ill with a mysterious fever that no doctor could cure. One night, a strange, towering figure, a monk over 7 feet tall, appeared in his sick room. Reiko, though weakened, was suspicious. He drew his legendary sword, the knee cutter, and slashed at the figure. The monk vanished, leaving a trail of white, sticky blood. The next day, Reiko and his 4 loyal retainers followed the blood trail out of the city and up into the mountains to a large, ancient burial mound. There, they found a gaping hole leading into the earth. Bravely, they descended into the darkness. At the bottom, they found a colossal cavern, and within it, the source of Reiko's illness, a monstrous Tsuchigumo, a giant spider, wounded from Reiko's earlier attack. The creature and its spider army fought furiously, but Reiko and his retainers were peerless warriors. After a tremendous battle, they slew the great spider. When they cut open its belly, thousands of skulls, the remains of its victims poured out. With the death of the Tsuchigumo, Reiko's mysterious illness was instantly cured. The analytical interpretation of this legend is rich with political symbolism. Reiko represents the central Yamato authority, the force of order, civilization, and imperial power. The Tsuchigumo represents the rebellious, uncivilized indigenous clans who refuse to submit. The spider's lair being an ancient burial mound is significant. It suggests that the Tsuchigumo are the old spirits of the land, the original inhabitants, whose very existence is a challenge to the new order. Reiko's illness is a metaphor for the instability of the state, a sickness caused by internal rebellion and resistance. The only way for the state, Reiko, to be cured is to venture into the dark places, confront the source of the rebellion, the Tsuchigumo, and utterly destroy it. The story is a foundational myth that legitimizes imperial conquest, framing it not as a political act of subjugation, but as a heroic act of monster slaying, a purification of the land from a demonic infestation. The Tsuchigumo is a haunting reminder that monsters are often made, not born. They are the ghosts of our own historical violence, the repressed memories of our own conquests. The people called Earth Spiders were not monsters. They were human beings who were driven from their lands, had their cultures erased, and were literally written out of history and into folklore as grotesque abominations. The legend of the Tsuchigumo is a testament to the power of narrative to shape reality, to turn men into monsters, and to justify atrocity. It teaches us to be critical of the stories we are told, especially the ones about our enemies. Who, in our own time, are we being taught to see as spiders? Who are the primitive and uncivilized peoples whose humanity is being denied to justify their displacement or destruction? The Tsuchigumo's legacy endures as a symbol of deep-seated, subterranean resentment. It is the anger of the land itself, and of the people who were once its masters. It is a promise that what is buried does not always stay buried. The old hatreds, the old gods, and the old grievances sleep uneasily in their earthen graves. The story of Minamoto no Reiko ends with a triumphant hero and a slain monster. But the very existence of a legend is proof that the spirit of the Tsuchigumo was never truly vanquished. It lives on in the shadows of official history, a dark and potent reminder that the earth remembers and it does not always forgive. Our journey through the shadow-haunted realms of the Yokai now draws to its close. We have stood in the colossal shadow of the Gashadokuro, a monument of bone built by our own indifference. We have felt the lethal caress of the Yukiana, the beautiful fury of a natural world betrayed. We have navigated the silken deceptions of the Jorigomo, a predator who wears the mask of our own desires. We have been lured to the water's edge by the Neurana, only to discover the monstrous truth beneath the placid surface. And finally, we have delved into the earth to confront the Tsuchigumo, a monster forged in the crucible of conquest and oppression. What wisdom, then, have we gleaned from these terrifying encounters? What unified truth do these disparate nightmares reveal? They teach us that the yokai are not external invaders from some alien dimension. They are specters born from the very fabric of the human experience. They are the embodied consequences of our actions and our inactions. The Gashadokuro is the result of societal neglect. The Yukiana is the blowback from our broken pact with nature. The Jorigomo is the trap we set for ourselves with our unchecked appetites. The Neurana is the peril we invite with our arrogance. And the Tsuchigumo is the ghost of our own historical violence, crawling from the grave we dug for it. These legends, then, form a coherent, if terrifying, system of cosmic justice. They are a spiritual ecology, where every act of cruelty, greed, hubris, or neglect creates its own corresponding monster, its own specific haunting. They are not punishments from a divine judge, but are the natural, inevitable outcomes of imbalance. They are the world's immune system responding to the infection of human folly. The enduring power of these stories lies in this profound, unsettling truth. We are the architects of our own demons. The best monsters, it seems, are always the ones that are, in fact, mirrors, showing us something true and terrible about ourselves. To watch these stories, to learn their names and understand their meanings, is to become part of an ancient and vital tradition. It is to become a keeper of the warnings, a guardian of the wisdom encoded in terror. By subscribing to this channel, you're not merely consuming content. You are joining a fellowship dedicated to the belief that our fears have something profound to teach us. I implore you to share these stories, to discuss them, and to leave your own interpretations in the comments below. For it is in this shared exploration that the light of understanding can be brought to even the darkest of corners. The world of the yokai is vast and deep, and we have but skimmed the surface of its ink-black waters. Countless other entities still lurk in the shadows, waiting for their stories to be told. Know that as long as there are forgotten griefs and unlearned lessons, new monsters will be born, and the legends will continue to evolve. I shall remain your faithful guide on these treacherous paths, for there is much more to uncover. May your nights be filled with productive terrors, and may your dreams be haunted only by the most profound and illuminating truths. Look for the meaning in the shadows, and do not be afraid of what you find. Until our next venture, remain vigilant. The night is full of voices for those who are willing to listen.